So hey, this is Rattata, and we're here in Sprout Tower. I'm going to focus on the central pillar. Apparently it's shaking because people upstairs are training. Obviously it could be something more mystical, but that's the story. Obviously, the other reason why it would be shaking would be that it's themed around a Bellsprout, or the appearance of a Bellsprout, which, as you can see, does have that central thing, which most would call a stem. And, of course, the animation of this in Ruby and Sapphire, for instance, would generally involve their shaking or moving that a bit. Treasures can slip from your fingertips, and sapphires melt in your hand. So, as such, because this game had to be remade, so while we're in here, we'll be fighting the sages, as they're called. They express their gratitude and honor to the only Pokemon who they consider Pokemon, which is, of course, Bellsprout. So there's Sage Sha. The correct option here is usually tackle, but you can always growl. It's Bellsprout, lose to lose. So, of course, the slightly annoying thing about this place is that, obviously, Bellsprout are probably going to be super effective against a Geodude, which is probably the opposite of the result you would expect from an early game Geodude in an area. So, really, you just sort of have to hang on there a bit. Obviously, as you can see, Sprout Tower is generally fairly low leveled, so if you were to catch a Geodude, it wouldn't be like the first generation where they just sort of hate Geodudes or Geodude enough to randomly manufacture a water gym just because they hate Geodude. That's probably the actual reason for that, but hey, might be to encourage the use of Pikachu. Might be because it was mandated by Bellsprout. Need to grow. So while this fight is probably going to be fairly straightforward, as you can see, Hooded isn't necessarily an impractical Pokemon to use early on, and although Bellsprout is kind of awesome, usually you would catch one. I'm not, because I have some experience with this. But, I mean, you probably want to. Obviously, if you catch a Wigglytuff, then they might fight between each other just because the Wigglytuff knows that it wins, and when it does, it does that. So, given that these fights are sort of non-entities, like the dialogue, we should probably discuss some outtakes from last time. So here's the fallout. For one thing, the magnificent power of third Pokemon is Faulkner would say. Well, obviously, the more evolved the Pokemon is, the more it acts like a bird, as Charizard can probably well attest. So, in that sense, I suppose that the underleveled Pidgeotto could perhaps count as an example of the magnificent power of Pokemon, in which case it was sort of displayed. But that depends. See, if we had bothered using a fairly high-leveled tude there, then it still wouldn't come off as that much of a power, would it? Like, what if we used, for instance, say Raichu, then the whole logic behind using a Pidgeotto in a... Oh, and by the way, so our Cyndaquil Futurelle is evolving, so good on you, Fuge. So Quilava is actually really awesome, as you can see, sort of. Just keep that image in mind. That's really how everybody envisions Quilava. You generally would ignore the Bellsprout. So they're kind of the opposite of Fairy Bayleaf, where you really can't. Honestly, we'd sort of like to keep them there, but on the other hand, a type legend with Thunder Punch or something is quite unstoppable in this game, certainly. So that might be something to aspire to. Or rather, to get, eventually. So most of the Pokemon in here are rats or Rattata. That's it, anyway. That's a lot of flaws on the screen. There's another. Wow. Well, I guess that makes 3 fires and Rattata. Hey. Or 4 fires if you count Quilava, who's doing quite decently. In terms of form in Pokemon battles. Anyway, so here's this statue. It looks important. It looks even more important when the screen is flashing and it looks like this weird demonic Bellsprout entity. But more importantly, there's a rat. So yeah, if you wish to have a flying Pokemon, which pre-evolved, so to speak, or was leveled below what it should be, and you were concerned about, the fact that people think, as they do, people think that the electric Pokemon might cut the wings of bird Pokemon. It seems a bit logical, perhaps, to therefore have a bird Pokemon which is evolved below its level to display the magnificence of bird Pokemon. For the following reason, that really evolution before its time, whether or not an evolution should be the case, that all needs to write you though, doesn't it? So really, are you sending out the right message? Is this why, Faulkner is the first gen, so they can get that out of the way and sort of pretend that didn't happen? Well, it depends, but you can sort of see Faulkner, getting up on the stage, as I believe that all of them do in anime. Except for Jasmine, who jumps. And, just sort of going. Alright then, so you shall see the full magnificence of bird Pokemon, and then just sort of like stamping the foot, stamping your leg, clenching the fist and banging it on the table. That's all chalk. And then just sort of showing this Pidgeotto, which is level 9, and sort of flaunting it over. I don't know. It's Faulkner. They could probably make some sort of statement out of that, but enough said. So Sage Neil has a an appropriate message for everybody who thinks of themselves as bright and so on, or would use the word. Not, of course, intelligent, which is like a valid word which describes an actual thing, but bright, which is just a bunch of people being dicks and using weird words. Anyway, so you can light a Bellsprout on fire with that. I mean, furthering the idea that Cyndaquil and now even Quilava are canon, so it doesn't have to evolve into a Feraligatr. It's not. That's not necessitated. Also, we have the first Hooded. Now, Hooded is perhaps a bit different in this gym, especially given that, of course, Bellsprout are weak to Hooded if it uses a flying type attack, which sort of implies that the arc, if trainers in this place, is a bit skewed or bizarre. Anyway, so this sort of prefigures the fact that one of these is going to come up again later, so like if you have real problems with these, then okay. We'll get back to that later. Then, it's not, brightness, it's their head which is bright, just they actually have brightness around their head physically. Like, that's, like that probably would make more sense. Therefore, let there be light, so, up your game. Anyway, here's Redhead having a chat with this guy. Lieutenant Surge would probably disagree, but you get the feeling that Surge is a bit scared of Pokemon, so hey. They only care about strong Pokemon that can win, because, okay, that's slightly tautological it might seem, but, I mean, given that it sort of implies that they have problems with, for instance, Lance, and possibly that even this one might have been slightly difficult, just, unless he just sort of went and thrashed this guy and then got a lecture for some reason. I don't know, it happens. Anyway, let's catch a rat. Should do that at some point. It's Pokemon. The influx of Rattata, of course, here is interesting because Rattata was, of course, fairly early on in the game and seemed to represent some stuff. So, anyway, this place, cool. Next time, that one, but first, the important part. And we'll take them on, and that should be fun. They're probably named Sage. Twat. After the color of their head, or something. Anyway, whites. I'm sure the redhead wouldn't stand for Whitey doing all these things. They would stand against Whitey. It might be implicit that they mean strong Pokemon that can win as opposed to weak Pokemon that can win or improve to Pokemon that win undeservedly or without anything internal to back that up, which would pretty much be correct because they don't really care about being nice to their Pokemon or anything, so that's fairly decent, I suppose. But would they think that Pokemon and human can be friends? That's the important thing, right? Anyway. Honestly, you sort of wonder if Pokemon couldn't have, like, a slightly wider audience range if it just, like, stopped, phrasing things in the most, like, embarrassing way possible, even for the kids. Then they might not stop watching it and playing it and whatever else. And also, if they stop using the word friends ever. Ever. Ever.